it really comes down to planning and really asserting what we want out of society and how we want to utilize the tools that we have. So I don't know if you can go back to my presentation, like slide 18 one. There we go. So what's next? So to go in the future, I looked in the past, and so just wanted to bring fond memories of looking at that vehicle in 2012 in Sweden. My personal journey took me to look at what they were doing in automated vehicles in Singapore in 2014. Led me to coming out of the government and wanting to pursue looking at these purpose-built vehicles and new tools, and so helped establish Ollie for local motors. And then kind of went out into the consulting world and helped set up in Las Vegas a deployment of the Navia shuttle, which awesomely collaborated with the Podcar City Conference. So that worked out quite well. And then recently, finally had an opportunity to go to Milton Keynes in Coventry in the UK and check out the RDM pod. And if you haven't heard about them, they've done quite a bit of demonstrations and pilots, throughout the UK. They're starting to expand throughout Europe and had some long-term pilots in Milton Keynes. And so where I wanted to go next is so, on that personal journey and seeing that the tools that we have, and I alluded to in my previous remarks, is that there's a lot of new mobility choice, and I think choice, whether it's electric scooters or electric shared bikes, personal vehicles, elevated guideway systems, etc. We need to put these tools in the hands of planners, and this is a community that does not exist right now, but I was able to work with a international design firm, EDSA, and they approached me to say, hey, if you could start from scratch, what kind of community would you visualize for this community? And there were some constraints, but it was a competition in Egypt where there's 100 acres, whatever that turns into hectares, but a very large community that they wanted to densify, still be culturally sensitive, topographically sensitive, and how would they, begin to think architecturally and infrastructure-wise for new mobility. And so, this is the kind of steps we went through. Is we looked at I didn't get to go there, but I was in on the team that had went there, looked at photos. Established our goals, like, what type of density, how are those people going to interface with downtown Cairo, et cetera. So that left us, here's the site inventory, like I said, starting from scratch. We don't always get that opportunity, but this is just an example, and it will show some of the infrastructure treatments and things that I think are going to be more commonplace in the future. So some of the objectives and goals is we wanted to work with the land. We wanted to integrate residential, cultural, and established innovative land uses. We wanted to create that downtown core, to create the urbanist feeling that cafes, coffee shops, retail, and try to relegate parking to that. So there's really a free flow of pedestrian access and recreational opportunities throughout the community. Incorporate forward-thinking mobility options. So really looking at, are there private micro-transit opportunities? Are there bike-sharing opportunities to leverage? And then also smart city technologies. If there are parking, you should be aware of it. What are real-time connections and seamless opportunities between the micro-transit and the automated shuttles and other forms of transportation? And so we started to scope it out. This, looking at the topography, talking about some of the goals that we wanted to create. We were looking at greenways and lots of parks, a ring road for We had discussions of just making it relegated to AV traffic, to only buses. And so we continue to noodle around thinking about those, looking at, pedestrian flows. And then as that kind of visions got more cemented, we started to get, renderings and artists involved. And then, really started to get a little bit more technical and starting to push, some of the technical aspects of infrastructure. And so this is, I was pretty, it looks pretty simple there, but it's very innovative when you start to think, low-speed automated vehicles, bikes, and PEDs sharing a similar space. And, what we talked about is how we can, this is a simple aspect, but based on the technology of low-speed automated vehicles and the awareness of and the comfort of bicycles and pedestrians, those little lanes could be separated by gravel strips, slightly elevated stones, and things of that nature. This is another view of that. And then we also, we wanted to look at how these different types of systems would flow from one another. You visualize coming in from a very dense, chaotic, Cairo, maybe arriving at this new location via some type of bus or personal taxi, entering this community that has a variety of different transportation solutions, from personal car that you may have parked at the front, or bike sharing opportunities, or low-speed automated vehicles. And so what you see here is start to think about how these transportation solutions could couple together as well as segregate themselves. So what we really envision is, if you see the green, we call these like greenways leading from the boulevards, but the larger paths would be the low-speed automated vehicles, where they would only be relegated to those paths, where the other paths would be, only human or pedestrian style of transport. And so here's at the end, this is kind of gives you this is a rendering, but to kind of showcase what we're talking about is that, that vehicle is really programmed only to be able to go on those types of guideways, and in a low-speed environment, trying to foster that pedestrian zone to help out and facilitate what, like I said, making it safe for folks younger than 8 to older than 80. And so, when you're thinking about new mobility systems, just realize that they're, quickly changing, that we need to, create very flexible infrastructure, or utilize it in ways that are innovative. And I think small, and really just practical planning purposes. And I think we'll hear some of those at the final panel, but, paint, planters, those things can really help out and accentuate the current infrastructure we have. But when we're creating new infrastructure, plan for a multitude of different opportunities. Incorporate the complete trip. So what that means, again, is going back to the accessibility issue, is that we need to really think about transportation as a door-through-door trip, and not just a linear vehicle ride. And so that means, what we talked about in this community is, what's the digital infrastructure, the real-time information, what's the seamless opportunity, are there bikes available, and is it accessible to get through your door, into the vehicle, onto another vehicle. Design with people as a priority. I think that's what we've lost when we started focusing in on developing highways and our cities for vehicles, is we lost us. And that's what I say in the end there, is that, we need to start thinking about what do we want, or what we'll need in the future. And again, not to, hark on it too much, but, we have an opportunity now to design a system for what we want in the future. So, I don't know if, even if it's a Tesla that's driving itself, am I going to be comfortable getting into that vehicle when I'm 80 years old? I don't know. So to kind of follow up, it's people, not cars. And so I just wanted to give the couple quick little projects that are going on in the U.S. that I think are very interesting in this new mobility. This is Jacksonville, Florida. They have an antiquated people mover that's been in service. Unfortunately, it's kind of towed the line of some of these systems where it doesn't pick you up where you are, and it doesn't take you where you want to go. It's kind of a linear system that was a great showcase, but it's run its course, and they're modernizing the system. What they're thinking about doing is cleaning up that guideway. Right now they're evaluating the Navia and the Easy Mile, and they're looking at, I was just talking with Dennis about how do we get, to get there, to showcase that vehicle, but they want to bring that guideway down onto the ground and expand the catchment area with automated vehicles. So I think it'd be a great showcase of how you can use infrastructure in creative ways. Houston Metro, Texas of all places, has a very interesting roadmap of where they want to take their mobility in the future. They're looking at starting with university centers, really, and they've got some procurement RFPs out there looking at the low-speed automated shuttles. But they also have, I can't remember the specific number, but it's like 50 or 100 miles of dedicated BRT, some of it being dedicated guideway, and they really visualize that as a way to enhance public transportation in a city that in a state that is not known for public transportation by any means. And I wanted to bring up TransDev because I think so just a couple weeks ago, they debuted their prototype vehicle, the iCrystal. And I just think that, they've been investing in learning about automation from an operator perspective for quite some time, supporting both Navia and Easy Mile and others. They've learned a lot of lessons, and I think just the fact that they've created their own vehicle with Lore, a known manufacturer out of France, I think it shows you that there's probably appetite in the marketplace for these types of vehicles. In regards to transit and automation, this is, I figured this might be interesting to some folks, is, while the private sector, and that was a great way that Anna introduced this whole section. So, private sector leading with some of their private, vehicles and putting them on the market. But there's a different way to approach where automation is going. And in the Federal Transit Administration, where I used to work, has created what's called the Strategic Transit Automated Research Program, STAR program. And so there's precise research endeavors that they're going to be looking to support over the next 5 years or so. Everything from docking position, other driver assistance, all the way down to a fully automated bus. So this is the National Association of City Transportation Officials. This is also. Unfortunately, this organization, it's about 30 of the biggest cities, or advanced cities in the United States, that get together and talk about problems, try to do best practices. I've been talking with them about automation and trying to figure out how we can help them. They came out with their own kind of resource guide, which really, I think, bodes well for the multimodal pedestrian. And so, these are guidance that the cities are looking for in the future. Unfortunately, cities are so inundated with, the scooter problem, or scooter issues right now. We have scooters lying around in our middle of our sidewalks. We have electric assist bikes that are parked everywhere. That's been the real main focus, and they haven't really had a chance to address where automation is going. So this is kind of where what's next coming for me. So purpose-built vehicles, as I explained in the beginning, is I think that's the real promise. So one of the projects that we're working on with the state of Michigan, they had a multi-million-dollar Michigan Mobility Challenge, and with a consortium of different partners and entities, Pratt Miller being one that has developed this very flexible drive board. So all the components for an AV-ready vehicle are in that kind of agnostic drive board, ready for different types of top hats, they call them. So very customizable and scalable. So meaning the kind of rectangular pieces that you see are batteries, and they've designed this where you could put another battery pack in there and extend the vehicle. So really looking at something like a pod like that to a double pod, so working with other suppliers like Bosch, et cetera, to do the final engineering on that board. We're also working with the RDM pods, and we'll be working with the University of Michigan with their industrial engineering and ergonomics lab to do some research on how people interface with the vehicle, particularly how people in wheelchairs come into the vehicle, how they secure themselves, where the placement of screens should be, are there opportunities for people with limited vision, how all those folks are reacting to public transportation. Those studies are going on now. We're going to be enhancing it with the vehicle, utilizing this vehicle in a pilot. And then so here's what's really coming down the pipe for me is that we're hoping at the end of this is that we get that information, both through research and piloting to understand what is really needed holistically, from the user perspectives. So this is our rendering is what we see is that, this is supposedly downtown Michigan, and that's how what we presented to them with our RFP, our response, is that we visualize that there's going to be semi-dedicated guideway, great interface with a multitude of different mobility options, and that there's going to be some type of probably system approach to shared use automated vehicles. So that's what's next for me. Please stay in touch, and again, pleasure to be here, and thanks to Krista and everyone for having me.